Welcome to another episode of Tap Talk, your favorite alliterative talk show with your host, myself, Bob, the co-artistic director of the Third Avenue Playhouse, and
James, ditto.
And our special guest today, the lovely and talented Katherine Duffy. Yay!
Oh, hello, friend. When you said that you were the co-artistic director, I heard gorgeous artistic director.
Oh, well, yes. That does describe me well to a T. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And so, first of all, how are you? Where are you? And how are you doing?
I'm in Chicago, Illinois, in my apartment that I share with my two roommates. I'm doing well. The first 2 weeks, I don't know about you guys, but the first 2 weeks of the quarantine, I was very sad. It was a really hard time. Mm-hmm. But I think that I'm sort of getting into a groove of how this works, of how life is now. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. So how are you spending your time now?
Oh, I'm doing so many things. I have props. I got a label maker.
Mm-hmm.
She's very beautiful. I've been cooking lots of food from this cookbook. I'm an influencer. Yeah, but I've also been writing a lot, which is very cool. I sort of spend my days the way that I think like a memoirist might, you know?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I've been seeing every movie ever made, as fans of this show will know.
What have you been doing?
Every kitten rescue video ever made.
Yes, he's addicted to cat videos, cat porn, as I like to call it. And let me just, for those people that maybe not know, are familiar with Katherine. I'm sure a lot of you are. Some of you may not be. Katherine has done. Let's see let me name the plays here, and
this
you can tell.
Test.
It's a test. No, but I haven't written down too. Oh. I don't trust my memory. I could do it by memory, but I'm a talk show host now, so I have notes. Mm-hmm. Private Lives, Educating Rita, Sylvia, I Love a Piano, Steel Magnolias.
The Amish Project. See, I didn't have it all. The Amish Project.
I have my Sylvia costume rendering back there.
Yes.
Oh, you do?
I see it. And I have the Labradoodle photo of you as a dog.
Oh, yes.
It's been in my office ever since the show closed. And by the way, I must say, Sylvia is the most requested show I think we've ever done.
Oh.
I to this day, I hear people saying how much they love that show, and would you please bring it back?
Anytime. Yeah. I loved doing that show. I found an article that I wrote about it for the local newspaper. Mm-hmm. And it was so fun to talk about how I kind of incorporated all the dogs that I've ever loved in my life into Sylvia.
Yeah, it was fun. And, like I said, people talk about it and they laugh as they mention it. It was just a very memorable and delightful play, and your performance was incredible and wonderful.
Wow, that's such a heartwarming thing to hear in the quarantine.
So we ask a question of everybody who does this inquisition with us to reach back into your life and let us know what was the spark for you that you were bit by the theater bug or the arts bug. What?
I know. Yeah.
Huh?
I was at church camp. It was a day long sort of thing. I must have been about, I don't know, 7 or 8. And I wanted to be in the theater group because I grew up, we broke up into little groups. And I grew up, watching Fred and Ginger movies and loving those. I used to call them gray movies instead of black and white movies. And there were only 2 other people who were in my group, and we were doing some skit about a sheep, and I started like on all of the words that had a "but" in them. I would go "bah, but," and I remember like that was not in the script. That was me, riffing and kind of bringing my own, really becoming the sheep. And so I think that was it. That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, here she goes. And I think a lot of people have asked, I mean, I'm sure you guys have dealt with this of like, are your parents supportive, or did you ever have any pushback? Sure. No. I just sort of made my mind up, and then there it was. I just soldiered on. Kind of sometimes I'm like, was it idiotic to just be like, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm having a lot of setbacks, but here I go. So
no, it's not idiotic. I mean, it's about half and half. People whose parents were supportive and very helpful, and others like mine, which very lovingly were trying to get me to do anything else.
Just think about it. Yeah.
But they meant well, and I was too stubborn or whatever to pay much attention. But I do appreciate their concern, and the older I get, the more I realize what they were talking about.
Oh yeah, and also I feel like older actors tell you, and you're like, oh, whatever, fine. And then you're like, oh no, I might not be.
Okay, so that was your spark. So when did you decide that you might want to do this professionally? When did you get really serious about it?
It was in between the "but" and the "ah."
Yeah, no, I think, James, I think it wasn't until musical theater company class. Because before that, I'd never seen, for those of you who don't know, I was in musical theater company class at what was a joint venture of Skylight and First Stage. And James was the piano man, musical director, and Ray Jevoff was the, the king of it all. And I don't think until then I had ever really met people who did this professionally and made their lives being creative. And so I think from then forward, it was sort of a push and pull of trusting my own abilities and finding my own place and finding the right training and all that kind of stuff. But I think the second that you kind of see people, and Sarah Wilbur too. She was I loved her.
Oh yeah, Sarah.
Yeah. I think the second you meet people like that, and you see what you could be doing, it's kind of a done deal.
And how old were you when you were in that class with us? Were you 13?
Yeah, like 13 or 14, I think. Yeah, those were beautiful days. I still keep in touch with Lily Cummings, and I were just chatting.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she's doing well. And Drew, well, he wasn't in it, but Drew Brezowitz and I are writing a play about Lee Radziwill and her disastrous acting debut in Chicago. This is Jacqueline Kennedy's sister.
Oh, dear.
And at Truman Capote's encouragement, she appeared as Tracy Lord in the Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, I remember that story, yeah.
Yeah, and when Debbie Reynolds was there, and when they asked Debbie Reynolds what she thought of the play, she said, I don't want to get involved.
What a lovely, lovely remark.
Oh, yeah, I hope no one ever says that about me. I don't want to get involved.
We know of.
Well, that
was an amazing class. There was so much talent in that group.
Isn't David Lancel, isn't he a composer now, I think?
Yeah, and oh man, it was just an amazing group. And many did choose the showbiz as a career, and are doing quite well at it. Some who easily could have chosen showbiz as a career, Delaney Gilo, I'm thinking of you. If you're watching, you were an amazing talent, and you decided to go into public service, politics, law. which is great too. It was just some really smart, compassionate kids, and I think they've all turned out pretty well.
I think so too.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So from there, so how many, was that just one year that you worked First Stage and Skylight, or did you continue?
I did 2 years of the company class, and then I went back in college and was like the assistant director, which I think was a helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 years in college working and teaching at First Stage and doing, smaller productions in Milwaukee. And then I did 2 years of summer stock in college.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to Indiana University, IU, go Hoosiers.
And how was that? Did you enjoy the?
It was hard. I think
Yeah.
if any, prospective students are thinking about where they want to go to school, I think that college to me was something I didn't really beforehand, didn't really think about it in terms of like the day-to-day of like, who are your professors? What is your curriculum? What kind of performance opportunities do you have? Things like that. And so IU was just a really big program, and they put a lot of importance on their graduate students, which makes total sense if you're getting your MFA in acting or directing.
Sure.
It should be about you. But something that I did really love about IU was the opportunity we had a really robust sort of undergraduate theater company that I got to be on, the managing board of. And, we produced more than some storefronts in Chicago. We produced like 6 fully produced shows. I learned how to write grants. And I was, and performed in them. I was in Debbie Does Dallas, the musicale. And then we had cabarets. And I think one of the really cool things about that was getting to collaborate with your peers. Because once, I think in college, sometimes if you have a director who's your professor, of course what they're saying has to be correct. Or of course the direction that they're giving you is like, of course. And there's just kind of this power dynamic that can get a little bit confusing. And I think has been revealed by a lot of scandals and things, like sometimes the way that we've taught theater in the past is just not really taking care of our students and our young performers. But to get to learn how to collaborate with peers, I think it was so much more helpful in moving forward. And when I went to the Milwaukee Rep, and that was my first sort of thing besides Private Lives. That was good. But I did the Milwaukee Rep acting apprenticeship right after that. And there you're just kind of, you're in the trenches and you're collaborating with everyone, and you have to be a team player. And while you're kind of, the lowest of the totem pole, you're all on the same, you're all trying to make the same thing happen.
Well, sure. But you also get a chance. That's an extraordinary opportunity.
Oh yeah.
And it seems to be, I mean, you had a really good experience there, right?
Oh, I loved it. And it's not for everybody, certainly, because, I didn't live I was coming out of college. I didn't have a home, I wasn't leaving like a wife and children behind or something there, and money wasn't, they paid me just enough for me to be absolutely fine. And I was young enough that didn't matter. And they gave me a bus pass so I could go anywhere. Yeah, I really loved it. And I spent, I grew up going to the Milwaukee Rep, and I would stalk the interns every year from the dressing room of my college show. You know what I mean? Like, I'd just be like on the computer, okay, so who got the rep internship this year? And like, what did they do? And how can I be exactly like them? So yeah, I was pretty strategic about it.
And you got the opportunity to understudy. How many people did you understudy? Let's
see. I understudied Kelly Faulkner, and then I understudied Hollis Resnick, which is like the grand dame of Chicago theater. Yeah. And I think anytime anybody learns that I understudied Hollis Resnick, they're like, of course. And then I understudied Deb Staples in the Amish Project, which was a one-woman show, which was quite an undertaking, and I learned a lot. And I also understudied Laura T. Fisher who I've remained close with in Chicago. So it just getting to meet and watch how those women worked and how they worked differently. And also I had a season of mostly female directors, which was very, very cool.
And did you ever get to actually go on?
I have never gone on. Oh, well, I've never gone on as an understudy, but my first job in Chicago, I swung for 6 different tracks in an actor-musician musical about market riots. And I went on for every part, and sometimes 2 parts at the same time.
And how was that? I mean, I was an understudy, and in the early days, at least, of my first understudy job, I was just scared out of my mind. I would go up to the guy I'm understudying and say, "How are you today? Are you good? Excellent. Can I get you some tea?"
It's so nerve-wracking, and some people, I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I know actors who are like, I really want to get out there and do it. And I was like, no. I'm only going on if like something has gone terribly wrong, I feel like. Except I think that sometimes when you're a swing or you're in a show that has a longer run, sometimes it is really cool to be an understudy because you get to be the reason that someone gets to go to their brother's wedding or something. Like that's beautiful, and often it's planned and it goes well. And I felt like the second show that I did in Chicago, I lost my voice in the middle of it. And my understudy went on for me halfway through. And that was the first time that I'd ever had an understudy go on. And it was a really good learning experience for me because I just shouldn't have been doing the show anyway. Like if you can't do the show the way that the director has prepared it to be, if you are not there, you shouldn't be doing the show. I mean, if you have an understudy. And it was just a good lesson in ego of being like, I released this. And my understudy, Emily, is ready to go. She came right from a concert and she went on and she killed it, So, yeah. But
well, we're kind of hardwired to go on in whatever condition we're in, and we don't often, make that leap like maybe I shouldn't do this or whatever, but yeah, no, it's very smart of you to have come to that realization. If that ever happens again, I'm sure you'll know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember, I guess the first time I actually saw you, not the first time I had spoken to you, the first time I saw you really, I think, was for the understudy rehearsal of Amish Project. Was
No.
that? No,
that was after.
That is incorrect.
It is incorrect?
Let's correct it, Catherine.
That was
Bob,
after Private Lives?
Yes.
That was
Bob
after
was
Private
looking
Lives.
Oh,
for
okay. All right.
a young actor for Private Lives.
All right. Yes,
And,
I was going to.
I said, "What kind of person do you want, Bob?" It was the soubrette, and he said, "Well, somebody young and cute and very funny and grounded and this and that." And I was like, "Oh, you want Katherine Duffy?" So I called you, Catherine, and I left a message for you, talking it up. And Bob said, "Well, you sounded pretty definite about that. I haven't even met her." And I said, "Bob, call her back and listen to her voice on her answering machine." Just listen to her voice and you'll know.
Yeah,
and he did.
I
and
did.
he did.
I sent the same voicemail message. It's congratulations, you reached Katherine Duffy.
Well, I was the first time, I think the only time I've ever cast from a voicemail.
I did. To everybody out there, I did submit a video just to be sure, right? And I also think you had seen me at the Milwaukee General auditions. So I'm not just
I believe so. I trust your memory more than I trust mine, apparently. So,
and I know I had seen you that year at the Milwaukee General auditions, and mayhaps I hadn't seen you since.
That's it. I wasn't at the Generals.
Gotcha. Well, James, I remember I saw you because you orchestrated South Pacific at Skylight when I was in high school. And I wrote you a very, very long note about how much I loved you, and I dropped it off to you as you were conducting.
I do remember that. I loved it.
Well,
I think I was confident conducting the show. I mean, it was, It wasn't a distraction that threw me off my game. I didn't need to send the understudy out. So then after that, Katherine Duffy, that's right after that was when you started your rep internship.
Yes. And I have so many props. So I have this, which is a poster of the Fantastics from my high school that I just stole. I straight up stole it when I was graduating. I thought it was cool. And I hang it in my room because I remember you guys offered me something in the Fantastics. And I like asked the rep if I could do it. And they were like, no, you can't miss orientation. And then like 5 days after orientation, I was like, oh, yeah, it's, I'm really glad I'm here, but I would have loved to do the Fantastics. And they were like, well, if we knew it was for a show, we would have let you do it. And I'm like, so I always look at that poster of like, hey, babe, you have to fight for what you want, and you have to make it very clear, and you have to make sure that you grab every opportunity that you have.
The rep has been really good to us. They actually did let an actor out of a contract. He was going to be an understudy in not a huge show, but an ensemble show, and we were offering him a really nice role in a 4-actor show that he really wanted to do, and they were so nice about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just sometimes when you're we were talking so much about what I did when I was young, as if I'm not still so young. But I think when you're young, you're just like, okay, I don't want to rock the boat.
Don't I know it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you try not to ruffle any feathers, but you were. I want to keep on with your the little time when you were at the rep and then coming back to TAP, because what happened was that you were understudying the brilliant Deborah Staples in the show The Amish Project, which a lot of people who come to TAP will remember. It was a brilliant performance that you did for us, but it's a one-person show where you played 7?
I think 8. I believe 8.
8 characters, ages, genders, all kinds of characters, in a beautiful, difficult play, challenging, I should say. Anyway, so you were understudying at the rep, and you were allowed to invite a couple of people to your understudy run through, which, for those of you not in the show biz, is a thing that we do. And guests aren't usually invited to these. When I worked on the Broadway, I can't even count the number of understudy run-throughs I did. And it's something that you do to make sure that all of the understudies are ready to rock and roll if the occasion should arise. But at any rate, you were able to invite people to this, and you invited Bob and I.
I sure did.
Yeah. We were on a vacation around Wisconsin. It was more like a staycation. We didn't go far, but we were driving around Wisconsin, and we had been out west, Prairie du Chien. Yeah, Prairie du Chien. And we had swung back up to Trivers, where we were staying at a B&B. And I don't know if that's just when we got your email or if I just remembered it, but for some reason we had checked in email and we were like, oh yeah, Catherine's doing that thing at the rep. Well, we're sort of halfway home, but let's go back down and see it. We want to see Katherine, see what she's doing. So we went down, and I didn't know the play. I knew what it was about, but I didn't know it. I knew you, but I was just astonished. I knew that you were fabulous, but I had never seen that kind of range. It was just a fearless understudy run. It was amazing.
Thank you.
And I was moved. Lump in the throat, tears in the eyes, but simultaneous with my genuine reaction, I was like, she needs to come up and do this at TAP. She already knows her line. She only has one, but it's 75 pages long. So I don't know if I don't think I talked to you about it that day. You know, you were in the excitement of it all, and I really wanted to talk it over with Bob. But Bob said, "Yeah, we should do it. You directed, and I remember we came up with quite a different concept. I mean, you knew the line, and obviously you knew their staging and that interp of it, but ours turned out quite different, I think."
Well, I think it was so, I mean, it was really, I think you did a really lovely job of directing it, because I think I had fears about, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Am I just doing what Deb did?
Right.
Am I just copying somebody else's artistic, what they worked through? And I think even from the beginning, the fact that for those of you who saw it, at the rep, they didn't write anything down. It was all in the air. And imagined. And the fact that was like the first thing, it was like you came in and you were like, yeah, there'll be talk. And I was like, oh, this changes everything.
Yeah.
Which is just like sort of like a just silly actor thing to say. But also I think that because of all the different characters in the show, the different actor who is playing it, they all have different ins to what character is most like them.
Sure.
And that affects the way that the show is.
Yeah. I got to tell you, it was really such an extraordinary afternoon in the theater. And and it was in a rehearsal room. It wasn't in on stage in the theater. I think the set was taped out on the floor. You were wearing either the costume or a suggestion of the costume.
Well, I wasn't wearing the costume at all. I was wearing like an apron.
An apron or something. So no set, no lighting. It was just almost a bare room with a handful of people watching, and you just own the space, and we were all just captivated by that. And I can't say I was surprised, but it was very unexpected. I didn't know what to expect.
I think you could say that you were surprised, because I feel like that's been something of a secret weapon of mine in my career, is people not being kind of not expecting what they get.
Well, my only experience with you was with Private Lives. James had a longer history with you, and just a brilliant comic performance, and you are a wonderful comic actor. Your timing and just you you got the stuff, kid, for that. But I did suspect that there was other things to be mined from that gorgeous brain of yours. Yeah. So in that respect, I wasn't surprised. But it just the overall what you were able to achieve with Amish Project, which could not be more different than my experience with you in Private Lives, or subsequently in Sylvia. But it really, the next thing we did together was Educating Rita, I believe. Right. Which is also, it certainly has light comic moments, but it is a pretty well-drawn three-dimensional portrait of this young woman.
Yeah, and I look back on that. I look back on Educating Rita as such an interesting turning point for me, because it was my first show coming out of the rep, having done a lot of understudying, as we've talked about. And it was like, for the first 2 days of rehearsal, I was like, oh my gosh, I have just been drawing inside the lines of other people's choices for the past year. And Drew, who's the co-star, is he's kind of sailing the ship. And it was like, babe, you got to get it together. You are you're part of this ship too. But it was kind of lovely, because in the show he's a mentor. He's a professor to her. Obviously, he's learning as much from her as possibly more as she is from him. But I sort of loved how that mirrored it, and I think that it was really interesting that the blocking, I could tell when the blocking changed. We were working sequentially, and I could tell what was the moment where I was like, oh, duh. I gotta make some choices.
Yeah, you made some really wonderful choices, and that's not easy play to do. I mean, I don't know how many scenes there were in it. There was many scenes, and you were really having, and the time shift between each scene.
I love how you put the Beatles. I think that's the most beautiful sound design. The way that you had those Beatles songs at every.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And and speaking of sailing the ship, there's an old story about Carol Channing. She was backstage doing Hello Dolly, and she went to the actor playing Cornelius, who apparently had done a little bit of what she thought was upstaging, and yes, and she said, "Remember, darling, they do not call this play Hello Cornelius."
That was one of the first shows I ever saw was Carol Channing and Hello Dolly.
Yeah,
she toured it forever.
Yeah.
So I would say it wasn't called Educating Drew.
It's true. You're so right, Bob. You're so right. Thank you.
But anyway, that was an extraordinary summer. Followed. That was.
You were our artist in residence.
Yeah.
Artist in residence.
That was back in the days when we did four productions a summer. Now we only do 3. We've gotten much wiser about how many complete sets, such as they are, but how many complete productions we can mount with our small staff.
Right.
And we were, I don't want to say we were biting off more than we could chew, but we've made things really hard on ourselves. But not hard on you. You were a youngster and you had a lot of pep.
I had a lot of pep, but I'll tell you, it almost broke me.
Really?
Oh my gosh, when I got to I think there was it was between Sylvia and I Love a Piano where I was just like, okay, Duffy, here we go.
I know, and I could certainly feel it, that, what have we done? Oh no. Well, no, not that. It just that, it was, we thought maybe we'd just given a little bit too much responsibility to one person over a course of time. It wasn't anything to do with your abilities or anything like that. Just, but you came through beautifully.
Oh, you were great. And they were all key roles. There wasn't anything you could just sort of ham and egg your way through. Well, you can't do that on our little stage in anything, but especially in the roles you did. You didn't have a lot of downtime in any of those shows.
Oh my God, but can I just tell you that in Steel Magnolias, spoiler alert, I mean, I loved that Shelby died. That gave me a whole...
There's a whole act at the end.
Yeah.
Where you could study the script for the next show.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
I was in a show where one of the main characters died halfway through, and I had to carry the body out, and we got backstage, and he got up and just smiled at us and pulled out a little flask of Jack Daniels and said, "I'll see you at the curtain call." Go away. He was so happy to be dead.
No, I would just be dead, and I would be running Sylvia lines, what's gonna happen next? Yeah.
Well, I just went up on my next question. So I have on my notes here, you're starting working in or dabbling in stand-up right now?
Oh, yes. I had my first big stand-up gig on Leap Day, right before all of this hit.
Wow.
So I've been doing it for about a year.
So just
So
tell us how all that came about. I mean, why did you decide to do it, and how did you do it?
Yeah, I guess my thing is just doing one-woman shows. I learned I was the child wrangler for a new musical about the 2016 Chicago Cubs winning the World Series. And that's a really hard job, especially when the kids don't really need you. Because you're okay, let's go on stage and I guess I'll be here. So I learned all of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Fleabag, which is a television show, but is started off as a one-woman show. So I learned all of that and performed it in my friend's empty apartment before she moved to LA. and with just a string of lights and like 50 people crammed into this one room and me spinning around. I did it in the round. And there's a line that she says in it that her sister actually says to her in the play, and she just goes, you have to stop kind of you have to stop talking like you're doing stand-up all the time. Like, it's exhausting. And it was something that I thought about a lot. I was like, sometimes I do feel like, as actors and as performers, I feel like I'm constantly sort of doing a little pony show for people. Like, here I am, which I think prevents some authenticity, really. And I was like, well, what if I did stand up? What if I saved all my bits and did them on stage and practiced them and kind of did the math that you have to do to make sure that the jokes land where you want them to land. Honestly, it was sort of a personal thing of I don't know, trying to find being a little bit more grounded, maybe.
Yeah. And I don't know, stand-up just terrifies me. A one-person show, at least you have a character and a structure and
a script.
And a script. And
in stand-up, you have a script, but you have to turn on a dime depending what the audience reaction is, and you might not do that script that night. You have to do, plan B.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be even more naked and vulnerable than you would otherwise.
It's scary, but it's fun.
You're not the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. You're the delightful Miss Duffy.
I'm the delightful Miss Duffy. That's the show I'm writing, Jim.
Woo-hoo! Is it really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I know a little theater in Door County. You could probably maybe try it out.
Well, I'm writing it right now, and my goal is to have like sort of a quarantine online edition of it in June. So I'll keep you guys posted.
Oh, please.
That'll work really great for timing the laughs.
Yes. I know. I can't wait to make my roommate sit there and laugh at me.
There's a laugh track.
Well, I wrote I don't know about you guys. Bob, you do some writing. I know James does.
Yeah.
But Bob, you do some writing, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
We have to. I wrote this piece the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to win a Pulitzer. Greta Gerwig is going to direct this movie about my life. And then I read it the next day and I was like, well, this is trash. But you kind of have to keep coming back to it and writing again. But I wrote it all about the last stand-up gig that I did. I had many people it was about, a lot of things, but it was a lot about people that I had dated. And some of them happened to be in the audience and I did not know as I was telling these stories. So juicy stuff coming up in the Delightful Miss Duffy, right?
Well, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
We are coming to the end of our Tap Talk. Well,
I can't believe we are. This was such a delight.
I know, the time just flew by.
We'll do more. I mean, this series is really just about the backgrounds of different people and all that stuff. So next one will be what's happening now in the future and everything else. So this is not the end.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
We like returning guests in our show.
Yes.
What did you say, James?
We like returning guests in our show.
Oh my gosh. It's like I'm like John Mulaney on Myers. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a guest you've seen many times before. We always love having her here. It's Katherine Duffy.
It's Katherine Duffy.
So, do you have anything you'd like to say, or whatever? You have any more props, or?
Well, I want to thank you guys for giving me such a wonderful place to grow and learn a lot. I think that summer was crazy, but the way that you programmed it was such a wonderful use of my skills and what I had to offer. And I've been so lucky to get to really know the community in Door County. So I really, really treasure that.
Yeah, and you've also worked a bit at Peninsula Players too.
Yes, I have.
For a couple of seasons up there. So yeah, you've made the theatrical rounds of Door County.
Yeah, I'm no Dan Clare, but I tried.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. You have time.
Yeah, I have time. I'll catch up to him one day.
Well, we have to thank we have a friend of the theater who is sponsoring these Tap Talks. So we have to take a moment to thank our good friend. And please like us and share us and do all that stuff for us. And thank you, Katherine, so much for doing this.
Thank you, Katherine.
It was quite a joy. Thank you.
You're welcome. And please join us for the next exciting episode of Tap Talks or Tap Talks. So long.